Gotham, can you give me money?
To buy a prison.
Yeez. Actually bombs the city like a boss.
Wake up, Mr. Wayne. We have much to discuss.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Recently I just finished a playthrough of one of my favourite games, Batman Arkham City, and I just wanted to give my final thoughts and opinions on the game. I played this on the PS4 Return to Arkham Edition, so it comes with all of the DLCs and probably a little bit of a graphical upgrade, but other than that everything's pretty much the same to the original, and I 100%ed the main game, collecting all of the Riddler stuff, doing all the side missions, and completing all the DLCs. The only thing I didn't really do were the Riddler episode things, like where you just do combat challenges or like Predator challenges. I did a couple of those challenge maps, but I didn't do all of them because I didn't really care that much. But for the rest of the game, I did play it, I did fully complete it. It's all on my channel, so you can look in the description below for a playlist or wait until the end of the video to watch all of it if you want. And I've also got a link to all the other Batman games I've played. But with this introduction, we're just going to get straight into it with a little overview of the story.
I feel I should thank you. Capturing Bruce Wayne is so much easier than Batman.
I'm not going to go too in depth with the story, so I'm going to give kind of like footnotes of it. Just basically what you need to know about Arkham City. And what you need to know is that after Arkham Asylum and the Joker's 6 billionth escape attempt, Gotham City was like, maybe we should do something different. And Hugo Strange came up and he's like, what if you give me a section of the city and I'll put all the criminals in there, and then you give me some missiles as well? And they're like, yeah, sounds good to me. So Hugo Strange sends all of the criminals from Arkham Asylum, Blackgate and all that lot into Arkham City, but also throws in a couple of extra dudes in there, you know, a couple of political prisoners like Jack Ryder, or the biggest opposition to Arkham City, Bruce Wayne. But Bruce Wayne's opposition isn't the only reason that Hugo Strange sent him to Arkham City, because Hugo Strange knows that, spoiler alert, Bruce Wayne is Batman. Oh my god, how could he figure it out? Allowing Bruce Wayne / Batman to basically just go and do whatever he wants in Arkham City, and there's only one thing that Batman wants to do. That's to kick the shit out of some mentally ill villains. So he goes, you know, takes out Two-Face, Penguin, all that lot, until he meets his old buddy, the Joker. The Joker gets the upper hand though, and reveals that he is dying. But now, he's not the only one, because he's also infected Batman and has sent his blood into hospitals, which will also infect anyone on the receiving end of a blood transfusion. This is where the bulk of the story of Arkham City takes place, with Batman running around, trying to synthesize a cure, finding ingredients, finding Mr. Freeze, finding Ra's al Ghul, a bunch of, you know, classic villains. And instead of, you know, just talking, you can't really do that, you gotta fight each other. And then eventually, he manages to synthesize a cure with Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze goes, you know what, I'll give you the cure as long as you save my wife. Batman's like, yeah, sure. It's like, yeah. So then he takes the cure and everything's fine. Wait a minute, that isn't what happens, because no one talks to each other in Batman. Instead, Mr. Freeze goes, I want you to help me find my wife, so I'm going to try and kill you. And that allows Harley Quinn to steal the cure. Afterwards, Batman beats the shit out of Mr. Freeze and is like, I'll help you find your wife, Victor. But before that, I mean, that's a side mission. You don't even really need to do it. You can just leave her if you want. But Batman goes off to find the Joker, and he's looking all spiffy, all beautiful in his steel mill. Has a little bit of a fight, and then, oh no, Protocol 10's happening. That's Hugo Strange nuking Arkham City. Who could have figured that out? Who thought that giving a guy, one guy, access to a bunch of missiles whenever he wanted would be a bad idea? I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea. So naturally, Batman has to try and stop this. He goes all the way to the top of Wonder Tower. takes out Hugo Strange, finds out that Ra's al Ghul was behind it all the time. Then Ra's tries to kill Batman because he wants Batman as his heir, but Batman doesn't want to be Ra's heir. But then Ra's accidentally kills himself, but doesn't because he's got the Lazarus Pit. You know, normal Ra's al Ghul stuff. And then when you get to the bottom, Joker's like, "I've got your girlfriend." So then you got to go deal with that because, you know, can't take a rest. Got to go straight on and deal with Talia. Batman makes his way to the theater. Joker's like, "I've got your girlfriend." He beats the shit out of the Joker, but then, oh no, plot twist, that wasn't the real Joker, it was Clayface. The real Joker still hasn't taken the cure, still sick as shit, but also has just fucking one-tapped Talia al Ghul. So then, after a grueling battle, Batman basically probably killed Clayface by dropping him into the Lazarus Pit and then dropping a bunch of generators and electricity on him. I don't know if that would help with like the resurrection properties of the Lazarus Pit or if it's just murdered Clayface, but I think Clayface is probably dead. But he's not the only one, because after Batman takes the cure, Joker stabs him, Batman drops the cure, it smashes everywhere, and the Joker dies. We close off with Batman carrying the Joker's body outside of the theatre, where a bunch of his goons and Harley Quinn are there. They're all shot, all grief-stricken, so much that they don't even want to fight Batman. Then Batman takes Joker over to Gordon, and Gordon's like, "You didn't do this, did you?" And it's like, "No, of course not. I don't kill people." "Okay, I'll take your word for it." And that's where we leave with Batman Arkham City. Most people are dead who were involved with it. Hugo Strange and Joker, two of the main people, dead. Clayface, probably dead. Probably could have all been avoided, you know, just talk things through a bit, use a bit of logical thought and not build a prison in the middle of your city and then give one guy a bunch of missiles, but, you know, it happens, we've got to deal with the consequences. Overall, though, I do really like Arkham City's story. It's a lot more complicated than Arkham Asylum, and I think that the twists are a lot less predictable than in Arkham Origins and work a lot better. Obviously, nowadays, everyone really knows about the twist, but it's done exceptionally well, and it adds a little bit of detail on repeat playthroughs, where if you use detective vision, you can see that if it's the fake Joker, he doesn't have any bones, because Clayface doesn't have bones. There are only a couple of problems I have with it. One is, like, in the middle, it's just kind of dragged out. It's a lot of, like, "Oh no, this thing isn't here, but I need it, so I've got to go over here to go get it." And then it's like, "Oh, now I need this thing, so I've got to go over here. Oh, now I need this thing." It's like, "Oh, but it's over here instead of over there, where it should be." Which, I get it, but it's not the most creative way to extend the time. I also think that the story is kind of like split into, we got the like Hugo Strange section, which is like right at the beginning and right at the end. Then in the middle is all like Joker, and then like right at the end is also Joker. So it's more like split into four. But I feel like Hugo Strange could have had more time in the middle where he'll just pop up doing something, antagonizing you or something. He needed a bit more development. He shows up very sparsely. He barely uses the fact that, you know, he knows your secret identity. He just goes at the beginning and is like, "I know you're Batman." And then that's it. Like, he doesn't give a shit anymore, really. Doesn't use it as leverage at any point. It's a bit of a missed opportunity. And then my final problem with the story is more linked to one of the DLCs, which I will go into in just a second. But I'm going to give the story as a whole a 4 out of 5. I do think, you know, there are some flaws with it, but I think it's a very enjoyable story and it does its purpose well. It's probably the perfect length for a Batman game.
It's Batman!
What the hell?
Sorry to disappoint you, boys. It's just little old me.
When it comes to Batman Arkham City's DLC, there's probably about 3 main DLCs, but one of them we're going to ignore mostly because that's just added challenge maps and added characters for those challenge maps. It is nice that you get to play as Nightwing and Robin and Catwoman alongside Batman in the challenge maps, but I didn't play them that much. They're just there, really, and one of them is really crap, being Freight Train. But other than that, you know, we'll just ignore that. and we'll go on to the 2 main DLCs, the ones which are more like story DLCs. Firstly, we've got the Catwoman DLC. This one takes place during the main game, and the thing you need to know about this is it's a bit more of a real life context to this DLC. When Batman Arkham City was released, it was during the time that publishers were trying to dissuade people from buying second-hand games. So they would add DLC to the packaging with like a code, and obviously it's a one-time use, so if you buy a second-hand version you can't use that code and you have to pay like £5 to access it. For a lot of games this would be like multiplayer access, but because Batman Arkham City didn't have multiplayer, it was a Catwoman DLC. As Catwoman, you do a couple of things. At the beginning, you steal from Two-Face, which is immediately you see the consequences of as Batman, where Catwoman is suspended over an acid pool by Two-Face. Then later on, you try to rob a Tiger security vault, but you need some help, so you go and visit Poison Ivy, but she's a bit unhappy with you, so you have a little Poison Ivy boss fight. Then you actually go into the vault with a little stealth section. You help Batman out when he's under some rubble once Protocol 10 starts, and then right at the end you take down Two-Face again and get back all your gear. The important thing to note is that this takes place like during the main game. This isn't like something you do in a separate thing, it's just partway through the game. So like when Batman gets knocked out by the Joker, then you become Catwoman. In fact, it happens a lot of the time when Batman gets knocked out, and it's just like, I get that is meant to be that there's a passage of time between getting knocked out and obviously waking up, so in between that you see what happens from Catwoman's perspective. But it's like, oh no, Batman's in danger, well, let's go over to Catwoman. It's like, no, I want to know what's happening with Batman. I want to make sure that like, nothing's going wrong. I don't want to be like, oh no, I'm dead. Instead it's like, okay, now spend 5 minutes as Catwoman again, and then like 2 hours later it's okay, now spend another 5 minutes with Catwoman. And it's just not engaging enough, really. She does have a unique moveset, a different exploration method, which I'm not a big fan of the exploration method. It's weird, it's like time-based, and it's just a lot slower to get around the map. She doesn't feel built to traverse Arkham City. Her combat is pretty decent. Her gadgets, not the greatest. The bowlers are basically her version of the Batarang. The whip is way too slow to bother using. The caltrops are interesting, but you only get 3 per combat encounter, so it's not the greatest thing. She does have an added stealth element where she can cling to ceilings and walk around them, only some ceilings obviously, which does make her predator abilities a bit more interesting. But overall, she doesn't really provide a lot, and the actual story part is very bare bones. It does feel a little bit rushed, like, the exec's gone like, Jimmy, we need to stop people from buying this game secondhand. Can you put DLC in it? We're charging like £5 if they buy it secondhand, so we get more money. So yeah. What do you want? Just do anything. You got a week to do it. So just put it in. Like it feels way too rushed. It doesn't really add a lot, and in my opinion, breaks up the pace a lot. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give Catwoman's DLC a 2 out of 5. I think maybe with a bit more, a little bit longer, maybe like 10-minute sections, which have a bit more interest than just like, oh, I'm gonna go steal some things. And also, if her Two-Face boss fight, which I'll get into later when I talk about bosses, was a lot better because it's pretty crap, I would have enjoyed this a lot more.
What? Did you think it was gonna be that easy? Well, think again, loser!
The second DLC is Harley Quinn's Revenge. This one takes place after the main story and was released way after the game came out. Like, I mean, I don't know exactly when it came out, the DLC, but it definitely wasn't like the Catwoman DLC, which was day one. And what you do here is, for the most part, you play as Robin. Sometimes you go back and play as Batman, but it's after the main game. Harley Quinn's grieving a little bit. Batman try to infiltrate the steel mill and save some cops that Harley Quinn has taken hostage, but accidentally gets shot and has been kidnapped, so Robin's got to go and investigate what's gone wrong. Obviously, at the end of it, Robin and Batman save the day. They save the hostages. I think the ending is a bit weird because it's like, Harley Quinn's like, oh, I'm going to blow up the entire building, and it's like, oh, they're going to escape last second, and then Batman's going to be like, where's Robin? oh no, he died in the fire, and then like 5 seconds later it's like, oh, there's Robin. It's like, it doesn't really have a lot of stakes and felt a bit cliche, but the thing I really enjoyed about this DLC was playing as Robin. He has a very interesting moveset and gadgets. His bullet shield is great. The snap flash is very interesting, especially with some unique predator properties, like you can put it onto environmental objects which you can then move around the map. He offers a lot more interesting methods than Catwoman does, while still being fairly similar to Batman. And really, it's just making me more excited for Gotham Knights to see if a lot of his abilities and gadgets translate into that game. Obviously adding more, but hopefully the bullet shield and the snap flash and the zip kick come back, because they're great. And you don't get to play enough of Robin throughout the series. You get to play, a bit in this DLC and a bit in Arkham Knight, and then you can play him in challenge maps, and that's like it. But really, I think I'm going to give Harley Quinn's Revenge a 3 out of 5. I probably wouldn't buy either of these DLCs if I have to. Obviously, I got them both as part of the Return to Arkham collection. But, I mean, if Harley Quinn's Revenge was, like, between 5 and 10 quid, I might buy it. Like, maybe, if it was, like, 8 quid. I don't know. It's just, it's alright, but it's not necessary, and it's nothing groundbreaking. It's just an okay piece of DLC.
I don't have time for this. Let's make it quick.
As usual, the Batman games can split into 3 gameplay concepts. You've got the combat, you got the predator sections, and then you got the exploration. For combat, still as beautiful as ever. It's pretty much just Arkham Asylum with a little bit more. Just a little bit extra. There's the REC, the greatest gift that God ever made. Fucking love that thing. There's stuff like the multi-ground takedown, and the fact that when you reach like your 5 combo, but then if you get to like 12 or something, everything like slows down and you do more damage. So sometimes it's better to use that instead of go for a combo takedown, and then from there you could do stuff like massive special gadget combos. So like the REC, you shoot one guy and then electrocutes everyone else, or that's the only one I remember because it's the best one. Or, well, actually, if you throw a freeze grenade at someone, it would like do a cluster effect and hit everyone else around it as well, which is also great. Really, Arkham City benefits from just a few more combat options with your skills and stuff, but especially from more gadget options. But on top of that, it's not just the gadgets and the combat skills. The combat arenas tend to be a lot bigger and more spacious than Arkham Asylum and even Arkham Origins were. This allows for obviously bigger fights, but also less fights where you get close to a wall and then your camera's spinning around like 5 different directions. You don't know where you are, then you get hit and you get a little bit pissy because of it. Then you throw your PS4 out the window, then you have to pay for a new one. I definitely haven't done that. I actually haven't, but I've been close. I've thought about it. But really, Arkham City is just, the continuation of what Arkham Asylum created at the beginning. There's a reason why there's so many games like Middle-earth and Spider-Man and like Mad Max, which kind of took what Asylum and City had and used it for their own games. I wouldn't say improved, apart from maybe Middle-earth and Spider-Man. Mad Max didn't. just being real, yeah, didn't really improve. It's a much more basic version, but it still works. It's a very solid set of combat mechanics. It's not quite yet at its peak. That will take until Arkham Knight, which does so much, to be honest. It's so good for combat, but it is still exceptional and feels great. For the Predator section, you get a couple more gadgets. I mean, you still get like the Sonic Batarang, you've got the Disruptor, and some other stuff you can use. Like, you can use the REC sometimes, you can use the Zipline takedown. That was still in Arkham Asylum, obviously, but Arkham City adds a couple more gadgets. But what I really appreciate about Arkham City's Predator sections compared to Asylum is how they evolve throughout the game. The enemies tend to like develop and react more consistently throughout the game in City than they did in Asylum. In Asylum, it's kind of like it's always the same, and then like right near the end they put bombs on the gargoyles and that's like it. So if you stand on the gargoyle for too long, you explode. It's like, okay, but with Arkham City, they get more gadgets, so they get like the jammer, then they get like heat vision, they've got snipers, they get mines, and every time they add something, they give you an option to deal with it. So, you know, you'll get a skill, or like the jammer, you can hit them with the REC to temporarily disable it. You get a mine destructor, which will blow up the mines, but for some reason, that makes the mines non-lethal instead of lethal, so, you know, you can blow people up without killing them. Doesn't make sense, but who cares? Overall, really, the combat and predator sections just take what was there from Asylum and ups it a little bit, adds in some nice quality of life changes with some more skills, some more gadgets, and makes something truly exceptional. Really, I think where Arkham City stands out from the rest of the series is in its exploration. The city that Rocksteady crafted is absolutely amazing. It's the perfect size and is crafted in a way that means that it feels bigger than it actually is. You tend to have to take like the long road, but it's fine because it's not that much longer. It just changes something which take like a minute or two to traverse the whole thing to maybe 5 minutes. So it's about, you know, double or triple the amount of time to get around, but it's not that big of a deal because the initial like amount of time, if you just went from left to right, there was nothing in the way, wasn't really that long in the first place. On top of that, everything kind of feels built for the size of it, unlike Arkham Origins, which uses a lot of Arkham City but adds in a bit of its own. They still only have like one grapnel accelerator in that game, like one level grapnel accelerator, unlike Arkham Knight, which makes everything bigger, but then you get more grapnel accelerator boosts and you get, you know, the Batmobile. Arkham Origins went bigger but still kept Arkham City's movement, so it felt a lot sluggish and slow, but Arkham City has got the perfect size for the movement it has. With the grapnel accelerator, you can get around it fast enough. You're not going rapid, but it's the right amount of speed to get around where you don't feel slow or sluggish. You can get from point A to point B fairly well, and then there's a bunch of Easter eggs and stuff, because obviously the Riddler riddles are just pretty much Easter eggs all around, but there's a lot of iconic landmarks like the half-sunken GCPD building, the Ace Chemicals building, the museum, the Wonder Tower, the steel mill. There's a lot to love. It's very unique, iconic. I mean, half the fucking city's underwater. Like, where else do you see that? Like, really, the only thing I don't like about exploration is when you have to explore as Catwoman, and that's just because her weird timing-based movement is, well, weird.
I can see you have your hands full with Arkham City, but it's time for me to leave now.
Arkham City has a ton of iconic side missions. I mean, come on. You got the Tea Party, Cold Cool Killer, Remote Hideaway, Fragile Alliance, Shot in the Dark, AR Training? Wait, Watching the Wings, Identity Theft, and, Acts of Violence? Okay, maybe not every side mission is a banger in Arkham City, but most of them are pretty good, and I think overall they are very, very consistent. And I'm gonna go quick rundown of my rankings of the side missions and just a little, you know, couple of words about them, what I think about them. Starting off right at the bottom, number 12, Acts of Violence. Pretty much pointless. You fight one guy in a bunch of different areas, and it's mostly just at the end of the game you run around going, where's this one guy? It should have been like 3 or 4 guys beating on a dude. 11, Remote Hideaway. You just visit the offices and get the Mind Stabler. It's a nice upgrade, but it's not a side mission really. Number 10 is AR Training. It's interesting enough, and especially with the harder ones, it can push your skills a bit, but it's mostly just used to get the grapnel accelerator, and that's it. Number 9 is Heart of Ice. It's just one room of thugs. It's a bit interesting that Mr. Freeze gets to reunite with his wife, but other than that, not much. 8, we've got Hot and Cold, which is one room of thugs, but you get a really good gadget out of it. Number 7 is Watcher in the Wings. This is brought down a bit because it's mostly just visiting a couple of places to meet Azrael, and then at the end he's like, yo, sup, here's some cryptic shit, I'm leaving. But it's a nice setup for in the future. 6, we've got Fragile Alliance. It's a bit bit tedious because it's just going around blowing up 6 things. It's interesting to fight alongside Bane at the end, and with Batman knowing that like Bane was gonna betray him in the end. 5, got a shot in the dark. The detective stuff was good. The boss fight was bad. It's pretty much the exact opposite of the Arkham Origins Deadshot side mission. Number 4, identity theft. Detective stuff good. Hush, also good. I love him. You don't get a boss fight out of it, but you do get the reveal of who Hush is, which is an interesting reveal to people who don't know about him from the comics, and he's just an interesting character overall, and is also, setting stuff up for in the future with Arkham Knight. Number 3, we've got Enigma Conundrum. I think that this is the best of the Riddler stuff. You've actually got actual puzzles for the Riddler trophies, unlike Arkham Asylum, and the hostage challenges make things a lot more interesting than just going, oh, here's a bunch of riddles, and then at the end, you deal with Riddler. 2, you got Tea Party. It's very short, but it's trippy as balls, and it's fun beating the shit out of Jervis Tetch. I think that's his name. Is it Jarvis or is it Jervis? Never remember. And number 1, you got Cold Cool Killer. The best part about this is definitely the story, and it incorporates the exploration of Arkham City. The finish is a bit but I think the story that Zaz tells is very interesting, and it's nice to hear more about a fairly underutilized character. Overall, I'll give the side missions in Arkham City a 4 out of 5. Not every one of them is amazing, but I think it's the most consistent out of the series, and I like how some of them get resolved within Arkham City, and some of them are setting up for the future. Even though, most of them don't pay off in Arkham Knight, in Arkham City, it was a lot of fun to be like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen with Azrael and Hush.
You will bring me Nora, or you will die.
As usual, I'll be ranking every single boss in the game. This is based on what the wiki defines as a boss, so we have got 14 overall, starting at number 14, Deadshot. Absolutely pathetic. It's literally just wait until his laser's pointing the other way, crouch, go underneath him, take him down. The most basic version of a Predator fight, and is absolutely pitiful. 13, we've got Two-Face, which is on the opposite end of the spectrum of Predator boss fights. Here it's just a normal guy, but you've got to knock him down a bunch of times, and you can't do silent takedowns because after you've done that, he knows where you are. He's also got a grenade launcher, which is annoying, and you're playing as Catwoman, so when you're trying to escape frantically by going onto gargoyles, can be a bit awkward with a weird timing-based thing. And, she doesn't have a lot of great gadgets specifically for Predator sections. At number 12, we've got the Harley Quinn's Revenge stealth boss fight. This is basically the Two-Face one, but better. The arena's more suited for it, and Robin's got a lot more Predator options, which just makes it a lot easier and a lot more bearable. At 11, I don't know if I would even count this as a boss fight, but like I said, the wiki does, is the Penguin Titan Henchman. It's just like a Titan Henchman from Arkham Asylum, but it's better in this game. And, you get a decent sized fight around it, so when you first ultra stun him and you climb on his back, you get 12 dudes to just beat the shit out of. It's very easy, but it's a bit interesting. At 10 and 9, these are basically the same fights. It's Mr. Hammer and Mr. Sickle. The first time you meet both of them, they're unique. I mean, they're big guys with a big weapon, and they have a unique interaction with the REC, where if you hit them, they'll spin around and hit everyone around them, but they're very easy to deal with. You just whack them when they're about to hit you, you dodge over them, then you whack them some more, you just do that until they're taken out. Number 8, you got Joker, Mr. Hammer, and Titan, and then all the other henchmen. This is alright. It's a bit difficult because the Joker, you can't take him out of the game. He's always there, and it's fairly long. Plus, on top of that, you've got an environmental danger of the roller coaster rides coming through, which is probably my most enjoyable part about this fight. I think it's the most unique part about it. But overall, it's just a fairly long, normal encounter, really. 7, you got Mad Hatter. I mean, I like the side mission, but as a boss fight, it's not much. You're just fighting normal guys until Jervis shows up a bunch of times, and then you get to deck him. It is fun, but there's not much to it. 6, you got Poison Ivy. It's basically the Arkham Asylum fight, just not as long and not as painful. At number 5, I've got the boss fight from the end of Harley Quinn's Revenge. It's basically the Poison Ivy one again, But you got the Wonder City robots, which were nice to see and have unique elements. Like, I don't think they can be knocked down normally. Like, you have to do special stuff. Like, I think hit them with the RAC to get them knocked down, otherwise they're always standing. And then you've got to constantly watch out for Harley Quinn's laser sight, because she'll shoot like a grenade at you. So, you know, it's a bit unique. It's not difficult, but it's at least unique. Number 4 is when we get into like the actual proper boss fights, like fights where they have different phases or unique, like wholly unique encounters. And we've got Solomon Grundy. I love this fight. It's a bit easy and can be a little bit repetitive, but its different phases do change up his attacks decently. And at the end of it, you get to deck Oswald Cobblepot again, which is always fun. Number 3, you got Clayface. I think Clayface is kind of held back a bit by his second phase of his fight, or well, it's more like the third phase, the one where you're in like the Lazarus pit and you just chopping up his little clay minions. It's a lot easier than the first phase. The first phase is probably one of the most actual like boss fights other than number 2. Like, you have to deal with all these different attacks. They're well telegraphed, but they all require a different like way to deal with them. Number 2, you got Ra's al Ghul. This is a nice mixture of an actual boss fight with dealing with henchmen, but when you got to deal with the henchmen, you've still got to watch out for Ra's al Ghul popping up every now and again. Plus, it's a bit trippy, which is nice, and really, in any other game would be number 1. But there's just one guy who does everything to perfection, and that is Mr. Freeze. It's the most unique boss fight, period. It is the pinnacle of Predator boss fights, probably the pinnacle of boss fights in the Arkham series. I don't think a single Predator fight comes even close to Mr. Freeze. Most of them are crap, to be honest, but Mr. Freeze just does everything so right. The gist of it is basically you have to take him down a bunch of times, a bit similar to kind of like, you know, Two-Face and Harley Quinn, but you don't have to deal with a bunch of different henchmen all around as well. So, you know, when you knock out Smash them, then 5 guys will swarm on you. But the most important part is every time you do something, Mr. Freeze then adapts to it. So say you did a grate takedown, he will realize that and he will freeze all the grates so you can't go in them. So then you have to do an explosive wall takedown, but then he will improve his armor so explosives don't hurt him. Then you do an electricity takedown, but he'll improve his armor so electricity doesn't deal with him. And it basically, you have to use every tool at your disposal to beat him. Like with most things in Arkham City, I think the bosses, maybe not every single one of them are the best, but overall, they've got the most consistent boss fights in the series, and Mr. Freeze and Ra's al Ghul are probably the 2 best in the entire series, to be honest. I don't even know who else I would consider, so I've got to give Arkham City's boss fights a 5 out of 5. For a final score, I have to give Arkham City a 5 out of 5. I do think this is probably the best of the series. I personally prefer Arkham Knight a bit more just because of the gameplay improvements, really. But even I have to admit that Arkham City is probably the more overall consistently better game. And I think it's a game that everyone should play at least once. Even if you're not a Batman fan, who cares? Run around, beat the shit out of some people. It's great. It feels great. Absolutely amazing game. Play it if you haven't, and if you haven't, what are you doing?